virtue regulates our appetite for what is pleasant in accord with right reason and in light of our faith. What are we really about? Each pleasure, the eyes, for example, the ears, the palate, and so on, is created by God for a specific reason. We find it easier to eat the food that we need to be strong physically because food tastes good. That's the way God works. He's trying to make it easier for us and more pleasant too. That's why God made things like beautiful sunsets and chocolate and coffee. He didn't have to do that. He did so because He wants to make our path on this earth as pleasant as possible. He wants us to enjoy the pleasures that He created. But we are responsible for enjoying them in a reasonable way. Because we are rational creatures. We operate according to reason, or we're meant to, always. And we have a goal. And that goal is not this world, or the things of this world. It's Him. And we can't ever allow the things of this world to get in the way of going to God. And we're easily tricked into precisely allowing that to happen. You might remember the story in the Old Testament, the story of Esau, the brother of Jacob. Esau was the elder of the two. So he had the birthright, which for the Jews was significant. Well, anyway, Esau came in from the field, and there is Jacob with a nice supper all prepared. And he says, "I want food, give me that soup." And Jacob said to him, "I'll give you the soup, but I want your birthright." And Esau said, "What do I care about my birthright? I'm starving. Give me food. I don't care about my birthright. You can have it." So he threw away his birthright for a pottage of lentils. Lentil soup. Which I don't even like. Let alone give it away for a birthright. But the point here is that that's what souls do very often. They'll throw away their eternal birthright, their right to go to God, their place in heaven, their place as a child of God, for some immediate gratification. If only it were rare, but it's not. We can foolishly let our love for pleasure, our desire for gratification, dictate our life to the loss of everything that matters. So while the church, understanding our weakness, our vulnerability, puts special emphasis on the practice of temperance during Lent. She encourages the fast in particular, to step back from worldly enjoyments and diversions. Some of you perhaps are giving up alcohol for Lent, or others maybe are giving up using social media or whatever. And those are all part of temperance. Restraining one's desire for something which in fact is legitimate, but restraining it in order to exercise the heart and the will for God. It's the desire is to repair the damages done by intemperance in the past and re-establish virtue, order in the soul. So this virtue of temperance is tremendously important to us, this moderation of the desire for pleasure. Because without it, our bodily appetites, our animal appetites, if you will, begin to rule. And they hinder the life of the soul. And they even destroy the soul. Or they can get to that point. Right, the mind, for example, which is the highest faculty of the soul, by which we can know God, understand the ways of God in a certain measure, is pulled down by sensual things. And the measure that we're on the level of simply what we can see, what we can taste, what we can hear, and the measure we're on that level, we're oblivious to the things of God, oblivious to the things of the soul. That's why Scripture says, the sensual man perceiveth not the things of God. They're just not a picture for him. He's all about the senses. And the same thing, so the mind is pulled down, and so is the will. The will by which we choose God. If we give in inordinately and habitually to whatever inclination to pleasure there is, our will grows soft through lack of exercise, we might almost say. The man of pleasure comes to fear all difficulty. He finds that he can no longer even even deny himself the smallest thing, perhaps at a given moment, or require anything of himself. He simply seeks what pleases him. So the mind and the will are pulled down, and globally the soul, a heart, we might say, by which we love and serve God. It hardens from self-seeking. I remember Father Keith on a retreat, he preached to us priests, and he said, look, we are made to love. We cannot but love. And if we don't love God, we will need to love something, and that something ultimately will be ourself. If we give in to ourselves habitually, we grow in self-love, we grow in selfishness. It's like the great hand of selfishness takes our heart and squeezes it, reduces it to a tiny little thing, hardens it. The person becomes less and less concerned about God and the soul's entrusted to him, and more driven simply by self-gratification. So there's an apathy that sets in. There's a slavery to self. And sometimes we see a reckless abandonment to pleasure. Perhaps you've read somewhere or heard explained to you how the Alaskan Eskimos of old would catch a wolf. They would take a knife, a nice long blade, and they would dip it in animal blood. And then they would let it freeze and dip it in again. Let it freeze, dip it in again. Basically, they would make a blood popsicle for the wolf. And they would plant the knife in the ground, full first, so just the blade is sticking out. And the wolf smells the blood. He comes, and he begins to lick the blade. And of course, it's frozen, so it numbs his tongue. He begins to cut his tongue on the blade. And now he's bleeding, and he's consuming his own blood. Thinking, well, wolves don't think, but you get the picture. He's oblivious. He's just after the blood and the taste of blood. And in fact, he dies from loss of blood. At a given point, he just collapses. You'll forgive the rather gruesome image, but it's a perfect image of what happens when a soul gives into grave intemperance. He harms his own soul. He drains his own soul of its lifeblood, so to speak. And at a given point, he simply collapses. He has no strength anymore. He dies, spiritually speaking. So temperance is tremendously important. Let's look at it a little bit in practice. The principle is a simple one. We cannot let ourselves be ruled by the pleasure of a thing, the pleasantness or not of a thing. We cannot simply make our decisions based on I like it or I don't like it. I enjoy it or I don't enjoy it. It gives me pleasure or it doesn't give me pleasure. No, the principle has to be reason and measure in all things. Let's take some concrete examples. Food and drink. It's the first one that comes to mind. We eat and drink every day. Food and drink are for the strength of the body first. It's normal, I understand that. But not only for the body. If you have a drink with your friends, probably strengthen your friendship with your friends. If you eat a meal together as a family, you strengthen the family unity. And so on and so forth. You have cake and ice cream on somebody's birthday, it helps fittingly to celebrate something worth celebrating. But these enjoyments of the table are meant to be kept in a proper place and enjoyed in proper measure. It is unreasonable and thus intemperate to indulge indiscriminately for pleasure's sake. I like it, so I'm having more, just because I like it. It would be unreasonable and thus intemperate to use food or drink as a crutch. I need it to keep going. Or worse, to use it as an escape from reality. What's happening there? There's a disengagement of the will. It's like pushing in a clutch on a standing car, and it just goes. There's a habit of self-indulgence that cannot, because we're coasting, cannot but lead to sin. And obviously the one that's predominant here is alcohol. Look at the damage that alcohol can do to a marriage, to a family, to the upbringing of the children. Look at the mortal sins that the abuse of alcohol can lead to. And it's not rare. In our world, it's not rare. And it's not because someone can, quote unquote, handle his alcohol that it's okay to overindulge. You know, a man might be able to eat 6 quarter-pounders from McDonald's for dinner and not get sick, but that doesn't mean he hasn't overindulged. So it is with alcohol. It's not because someone can handle 6 drinks in the evening that it's fine to have 6 drinks in the evening. No, it's an excessive giving to the pleasure of alcohol in such a case. What about sound? The pleasures of the ears? Well, what we listen to can be a source of instruction to us. It can be a source of direction, a source of inspiration, all of which help us on the path of life. But it would be unreasonable, thus intemperate, to subject our soul through improper conversations, or listening to improper podcasts, or a talk show, or listening to bad music. It would be unreasonable to subject our soul by those things to enticement, to disordered action, and a spirit which is not Catholic. And here we can focus particularly on music, because nothing marks the soul like music does, for good or for bad. Good music can elevate the soul, can give joy to the soul, can give energy to the soul. And bad music can poison the soul, really pull the soul down, affect his mindset, his will to strive, injecting bitterness, despair. So the determining factor in what we choose to listen to cannot simply be the fact that we're drawn to it. I like it. That's not the first question. The first question is, how does it affect me? Does it help me or not? Does it help me along the path that I'm trying to follow or not? We have to make our choices reasonably, based on reason. That's temperance. How about the eyes? What we watch or gaze upon can lift our hearts, or again, poison them. It would be unreasonable, intemperate, to drink in everything we possibly can with the eyes simply because it's there. Why is that unreasonable? Why is it wrong? Because desire is born through the eyes, and there is much that cannot be possessed or enjoyed without sin. And it is wrong to window shop possibilities of sin. Along the same lines, on the other side of the coin, it would be unreasonable, thus intemperate, to read indiscriminately everything that's out there. There's no better way to lose heart, to lose hope, to grow bitter, than to drink in every negative thing that's out there. Every negative article, post, rant, online, whatever. It's there, so I can know. How does it affect you? How is it affecting your spirit? How is it affecting you in your strength and resolution on the path to God? What about recreation? Enjoyable activities, things we enjoy to do. Going skiing, for example, or playing board games, or fishing, or hunting, or hiking, or whatever. These are all good things. We are not robots. We need a certain amount of healthy recreation. But healthy is the operative word. In other words, recreation should rejuvenate us. The better to be able to resume our duties with vigor. Recreation should never drain us of the energy we need to do our duties. So if someone gets up on Monday morning and he's exhausted because he played so hard all weekend, and now he can't stay awake in class, or he can't focus on the job at work, no, he's been intemperate in his recreation. Never should enjoyment of an activity be at the expense of our duties, our religious duties, our family duties, or otherwise. Most people today are guilty of a great intemperance in this area. Modern man, generally speaking, lives to play. And pretty much everything takes a backseat to that. Sleep, studies, prayer, family life, all takes a backseat to play. And it's interesting. Never have people been more unhappy. Chesterton put his finger directly on it, quoting Aldous Huxley. He said, "The good times have gone, with the arrival of a good time all the time." Reason and measure in all things. What am I about? Will it help me along the path, or is it getting in the way? Where is the balance? What is the right measure? These are the questions Mother Church wants us to be asking ourselves during Lent. And she wants us to be working on it. Lent is not about, well, I'll give up chocolate, or I'll give up milk, and that's it. That's my Lent. No. The church is trying to help us put order in our soul. It requires more than simply, well, I'll give up chocolate. We live, my dear friends, in a difficult world. And the inclination, the tendency is to try to look for things that will ease the struggle. But we have to be careful, or we'll find ourselves licking the blood-soaked knife, to the detriment of our soul and the souls entrusted to us. One of the Desert Fathers said, "Do not give your heart to that which cannot satisfy your heart." We're made for God. We want to give our heart to God. Only God can fill our hearts. That's why we make the efforts we make during Lent. Don't ever lose sight of that. It's not just empty gymnastics. We go against ourselves to make an effort for God. We go against our selfishness to better love God. Because we want to love Him in every aspect of our life. We want to grow closer to Him. We want one day to spend eternity with Him in heaven. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Ghost.